Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Waiting Room, the show that challenges you to thrive, not just survive, in every area of your life. This is your host, Rue, and in this podcast, I'll be talking about the realities of waiting in every season of life. Remember, how we wait is more important than the wait itself, so waiting well is key. In this episode, I'll be talking about who or what is defining you. As I mentioned, I'll be talking about who or what defines us. We are living in a world where too many people are living shallow lives because they haven't taken the time to develop intrapersonally. So their not inter, but intrapersonal intelligence is very low. So before we dive in, I want to look at a couple of terms. I'm going to define a few terms here. So first, identity. Identity is the characteristics determining who or what a person or thing is. So identity crisis would be defined as a period of uncertainty and confusion in which a person's sense of identity becomes insecure, typically due to a change in their expected aims or role in society. So my question is, how do we know our identity? How do we determine what our role is, and where do we get our worth? So we were created in God's image, so our identity should come from Him, our Creator. We get distorted when our identity comes from other things and other created beings instead of the Creator. Our worth is not defined by popular culture or our clothes or our job, our car, our house, relationship status, education, your beauty, your size, gender, race, especially nowadays race is a big one. So there's more to each individual than all of those things. And I'm not saying that these quote unquote labels don't matter, but I'm saying that they don't define us. We don't get our identity from them. If we just focus on those and make those a big issue, we tend to neglect actually getting to know people and build meaningful relationships. So they kind of create this false awareness of people, because you'll see like, okay, they have money or they don't have money, or they are this race or they have this house. And instead of actually breaking past that barrier and getting to know them and know the person behind what you see on the outside. So from my observation, I've noticed there are two types of people having identity crises. The first one is a person out there trying to be something they are not. So these are the pretenders. These are the ones that trying to fit in. So they will morph and change. The problem is they keep changing depending on the people around them. So with one group of people, they're one way, and with another group of people, they're different. And over time, this can cause people to lose trust in them because they're inconsistent. And also, I think it does something to them mentally as well if you're unstable or not grounded in who you are. So you should not be changing personalities and character depending on who's around you. That should be consistent regardless of the circumstances. And then there are those who are holding back. So they're consistent, they're not changing or pretending, but they're also not being who they were meant to be. And it could be because of some self-imposed limitations. They disqualify themselves and they think, oh, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not rich enough to be the person who I am meant to be. And other times it could be because of discouragement, words that have been spoken over them. And it is true that words impact our lives. You might have had a 7th grade teacher say, "Oh, you will always be stupid," and somehow those words keep resurfacing. Or you had a parent say something to you and those words keep echoing in your mind, and you basically don't step out and challenge yourself because you don't feel worthy. I know there's a wide range of listeners, so I don't know where you find yourself in this, but to the ladies, we can't be defined by popular media's beauty standards. Even those models don't look like that. And we live in a society with social media where we're constantly being told how to look, how to act, how to dress, how to think, pretty much. Our identity does not or should not come from popular media. And let me just throw this out there. It is okay to embrace femininity. I know in this world of feminism that is not a popular opinion, and it might trigger some people. And I might actually talk about femininity versus feminism in a later episode, but I think for the ladies, femininity is okay. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, we have the guys. So same thing, popular media should not define you. And I think with guys, it's, strength versus weakness. You're either strong or either weak. It's okay to be both. You might be strong in one area and weak in another, and vice versa, and that is completely normal. And unfortunately, we live in a world where masculinity is trying to be redefined, and it has changed, morphed over the years. And I know that might trigger other people, but that's something that we can talk about later. Like I mentioned earlier, we are created in God's image, and He created males and females differently for a purpose, and we need to embrace those differences for us to find our worth. And then we have our young people versus older people. So young folks, you don't have to live by the stereotype that you're clueless and irresponsible. You don't have to follow stupid decisions made by your peers. You can swim against the tide. You can be somebody who actually uses their brain and has common sense. So a lot of times these stereotypes come from patterns in society, but then it's sort of like society creates these patterns, and it's this a vicious cycle. We're constantly watching what other people are doing, and then we're like, oh, okay, yeah, it's okay to eat Tide Pods. Like, that is not okay. Like, who does that? Seriously. No, sorry. Let me get back. All right. And then for you older folks, if there's breath in your lungs, there's life, and it's never too late to start living your dreams. Some of the most successful people achieved greatness later on in their lives, in their 50s, 60s, 70s. So you don't have to give up if you didn't achieve success at a young age. And then for you married folks out there, your spouse doesn't define you. I know that might shake some of you a little bit, but the better you are as an individual, if you are grounded in your character, the better you will be as a team. And then for my singles out there, so those who have never been married or who are divorced or widowed, your worth doesn't diminish simply because you are not in a relationship. So you can still make impact in this world, have a full life regardless of your relationship status. And then there are those that are successful. Your worth doesn't define you. Money comes and goes so quickly. The economy could burp and you could lose everything. But what matters is your character and your resilience. And those are the things that are going to carry you through life. That's what's more important. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, if you're struggling to make ends meet, you might not have much to your name, but you are still a worthy person. And your character, like I said, is what's gonna matter. So I could keep going. There's so many different classes and so many boxes and definitions or labels that we put on people. What my point is, those don't define us, regardless of what season or what life stage you are in right now. So where does that leave us? The most important thing is that we say what God says about us, not society, not social media, not popular culture. We were created to be individuals with our own likes and dislikes, strengths, weaknesses, tastes, talents, desires, hopes, dreams. The list is endless. So we do ourselves an injustice when we try to find validation from others or try to be something that we were not meant to be. One of my favorite scriptures in the book of Psalms says, "For you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know that full well." So that right there should be the basis for where we get our definition of who we are. We were created individually by a very creative maker who made us in a way that if each and every one of us was to be who you're meant to be, and if we just accepted and celebrated our differences, we wouldn't have room to be anything else. We wouldn't have room to pretend or to be insecure and everything else that comes with the insecurities of not knowing your worth. This is something that I have been learning more so in the last few years. So several years ago, I went through this period of personal growth. I noticed myself becoming more bolder and just more assertive, and I started to care less about other people's opinions or other people's limitations. So along with that, I felt like I had to apologize, because as you're growing, and if you've gone through this, you probably understand what I'm talking about. Your character is developing, you're changing, but then you also feel like you have to apologize for being bolder or standing your ground or saying no, or you have to defend yourself, or you have to explain yourself and what's going on inside of you. But and this is something that I think will happen several times through our lives as we go through different stages. But I know this is something I experienced, I started going through, several years ago. And I realized that I was finally settling into my own skin and just finding my worth and digging more into the Word of God and learning who I was, and also knowing who I was not, and being okay with that, and not having to feel like I was an oddball, or just because somebody has their own insecurities doesn't necessarily mean that I can't do well in an area in order to make somebody else feel better about themselves. So I want to leave you with a question this week. Are you who you are meant to be, or are you living by other people's definitions and limitations? So I challenge you to stop caring about what other people think about you and only care about what your Creator thinks about you. And take stock of your life, make necessary changes, but more than anything, just be great at being you. Lastly, I want to recommend 2 books this week. So one is for the ladies and one is for the gents. And honestly, you could read both of them. I've read both, so you're good. But Mark of a Man and Let Me Be a Woman, both of those are by Elizabeth Elliot. If you're a guy, you can start off with Mark of a Man, and then if you want a little insight, read Let Me Be a Woman. And then ladies, you can start with Let Me Be a Woman, and for insight, read Mark of a Man. But both of those are great books. She does a great job of just breaking down masculinity and femininity by God's design, and helping, especially this generation that is so lost on this issue. She does a good job of reminding us, where our worth lies. So the links are in the description. So once again, these are not sponsors, just my recommendation. And that is it for today's episode, folks. Thank you for joining me here in the waiting room. Look out for my next episode. And in the meantime, please share this podcast with a friend or two. I'd love to hear your feedback. So you can submit a question via email at thewaitingroom@gmail.com or follow me on Instagram, The Waiting Room, and leave a comment there. Until then, take care.